Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ namasami. So, in the practice of meditation, we often have our sort of favorite or default methods of meditation, what seems to work best for us. And that varies person to person, and this is quite natural. And so for instance, I usually when I lead a guided meditation on Sunday night, I pretty much always start the same way, with breath, body scanning, breath meditation, and then it goes from there. And that's to the extent that I have a sort of main kind of practice, that's it. But one of the things is that over the long term, sometimes every form of meditation has limitations, and it's likely that there'll be times when our primary practice isn't helpful for one reason or another, and so it's useful to develop auxiliary practices as well. It's like having a big toolbox. I mean, breath meditation is in some ways, it can be quite a Swiss Army knife, but sometimes you need something else. And this evening I thought I'd talk about another meditation practice that I've developed I was practicing Metta or Goodwill as a meditation theme a couple of years before I came to a Monastery. So I've been, it's over 20 years. And I still go back to it. Fairly frequently. And it's a very helpful tool, because even from the beginning I found that Metta Bhavana, cultivation of goodwill, was the practice that was sort of I could usually rely on to pull me out of holes. If meditation was going badly, the breath was sometimes just not working, and so I found Goodwill to be very helpful. And so it's a good antidote to both anger and depression. So these are very common negative experiences in human existence. And the practice, developing goodwill, is helpful for both of those. And I guess just to talk a little bit about the translation of metta, M-E-T-T-A. It's not an easy word to translate into English. I think if the most accurate is probably goodwill. Loving kindness is a somewhat vague, but I know what they mean, because the most potent word for sort of good feeling towards something in English is love. And it's also one of the most overused and easy to misuse and misinterpret words in the English language. And so loving kindness attempts to shade that, indicating that it's not romantic love, and it's not the way, and it's not the way you might love pizza. Love just gets, it's a word that doesn't work very well. But what's interesting is each translator has his or her own words for it, and Bhante Sujato, I have found, translates metta as love. And I've been reflecting on that, and he's certainly choosing the most potent word. And actually, in a more Christian context, it might work. Because, I don't know, I won't be able to recite it, but when Paul, the Apostle Paul, talks about love in his famous letter to the Corinthians, it actually uses words that describes it not so differently than the way the Metta Sutta does. I think Paul has the advantage of speaking in Greek, which has 4 different words for love, and I believe he's using agape there, which is clearly differentiated from eros. But again, my Greek, my Old Testament or my New Testament studies ended a long time ago. In our sutta discussion on Wednesday night, someone pointed out, I think very helpfully, that some translations do best for the head, other translations are more heartfelt. And we were reflecting as a group that some of the work of Dhamma practice is to learn what, say, in this case, metta means, both on an intellectual level and on a heart level, and to therefore understand it better than any translation. And so in terms of what metta means on a, the definition of it, it's closely it's equivalent to the factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right intention, of non-ill will, which is abhyapada, so non-ill will. The Buddha often defines things negatively, and in Pali, negation is just as negative words are just as strong as positive ones. So non-ill will is quite potent, and so metta translating as the opposite of ill will, and it's wishing for other beings to experience happiness and well-being. It's incompatible with anger, incompatible with jealousy, incompatible with aversion. Lumpur Sumedho, I think, helpfully points out that when you experiencing metta for someone doesn't necessarily mean that you like them, and because otherwise it can't be universal. We human beings have so many quirks that it's impossible to like to like everybody, and some people do things that are positively reprehensible and totally unlikable. but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you do not have to hold ill will for them. You can still, even someone behaving very badly, you can still have goodwill towards them. Given the Buddhist understanding of karma, one of the best things to wish someone is that they'll stop misbehaving, because if they're acting in ways that harm other people, they're storing up danger for themselves in the future. And metta is also completely compatible with things like stepping out of a harmful relationship with someone. You don't have, it can be very difficult, but you don't have to necessarily drop goodwill to tell someone that the best thing for us to do is to split because this isn't working. And it's completely compatible with pointing out someone's misbehavior and its consequences. Again, you do that because you have goodwill for them and for the people that they might be harming. And and sometimes, that's a skillful thing to do, to point it out. And hopefully it will increase the well-being of that person and those around them. So, goodwill is quite different from liking or approval, or again, some of the more sort of popular definitions of love. It's also quite different than, the attached form of love that often romantic relationships begin with. I like you because you make me feel good. That's very different. That's very different than metta. This is all the sort of the definitions from the head. In terms of the heart, this is more where the experience comes in. You learn how it feels by doing it. And so 20 years ago, when I started with metta practice, I had a very good book, and that's Sharon Salzberg's Loving Kindness, The Revolutionary Art of Happiness. And I believe it's still in print. And it's actually, my understanding is that it's a faithful but modern representation of the Pali commentaries, meditation instructions. And so it's venerable. It's not, Sharon Salzberg didn't invent it. She is describing what her teachers taught her, and they in turn learned it from their teachers and ancient texts. It doesn't go all the way back to the Pali Canon and the Buddha. The concepts do, the exact methods don't. And so the way she teaches to begin, and I think this is in the commentaries, but I haven't checked, is to start with the practice of forgiveness, which I have found very potent. And so the idea is, before you even begin with goodwill, you clear the heart, because you make effort to let go of what you might be hanging on to. And so I still remember Sharon's forgiveness phrases. So if you begin by just taking a seat in meditation posture. Posture is probably less critical for metta practice than, say, for breath meditation, because you're not working as directly with the physical body. And then, just close the eyes, and then the phrases she recommends mentally reciting and reflecting on are, if I have harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, I ask their forgiveness and forgive myself to the extent that I am able. If anyone has harmed me, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, I forgive them to the extent that I am able. If I have harmed myself, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, I forgive myself to the extent that I am able. And just to unpack a bit of the wisdom contained in those statements. First off, it's an invitation, it's not a demand. You cannot demand forgiveness. You cannot demand the heart to let go of its grudges. If you try, it will just refuse. You won't get anywhere. And it applies equally to oneself and others. It recognizes that you may or may not be aware of whether your actions have caused harm. It also recognizes that sometimes we do things that we very well know or suspect will cause harm, maybe even because we want to. But that even those are, very intentional acts, we would be skillful to forgive those. And forgiveness is unilateral. You don't it's not a bargain. You forgive yourself and others because you recognize the harmful consequences of holding on. As long as you keep holding on to grudges against someone else or regrets about your own behavior in the past, for that long you will just suffer. And sometimes you can't let go. And that's just how it is. So again, it can't be a demand, but one can open to the possibility of letting go of past hurts. And that clears the way for the cultivation of goodwill. And so one practices this for a variable length of time. It really depends where the heart is, how much time to spend with forgiveness. Sometimes you just, if it's still relevant, if that's where the heart's engaging, you can just spend the whole meditation period on that. And it's very helpful. And also, I very much appreciate the last one. If I have harmed myself, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, I forgive myself to the extent that I am able. Because, when one starts to practice the spiritual path, one recognizes, how much effect one's own actions have, and how often one's own actions fall short. And so, in a way, I've spent more time with that than either of the first two, because just recognizing that, truly we are our own refuge, and we're also our own sort of worst enemy. All these phrases recognize that. I think I think there is a somewhat, I think Mahatma Gandhi, I won't go through the whole quote, but I think he realized that, his worst enemy was not the British, and was not the sort of Indian people who gave him so much trouble. His worst enemy was this little brown guy called Mohandas Gandhi. And he said, I have very little influence with him. So, yeah. And then when it's time, we'll continue on to practice of goodwill. And the commentaries clearly recommend to start with yourself. And so, one chooses phrases that work for, that resonate with the heart. There's lots of them in Sharon Salzberg's book. I've forgotten most of them, other than the ones that I use. And so I just use the ones from the chanting book. So, may I abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. And that, very, very simple. Some people prefer somewhat more complex, which is fine. But the simplicity, there's a lot there. Because in particular, the whole refrain is, may I be free from X. And it's not, one isn't wishing oneself any form of petty happiness that depends on the external world. It's not bad to wish those things, not at all, but they're unreliable. When you think about what do you really want, okay, well, freedom from ill will. That is, we suffer a lot from ill will and hostility. And again, to the extent that we have ill will towards other people, to that extent we suffer. And then that last one, freedom from anxiety. Imagine if you didn't get anxious about anything. What would that be like? And my understanding is that the only people who are never anxious about anything are arahants. Everybody else has at least something to worry about. And so these are not small. And they are, completely in accord with, the teachings of the Buddha, the workings of karma, and what is within our power instead of, what we can do instead of trying to ask favors of the world. So, may I abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. And so when one works with the phrases, particularly these are here there are, I'm following instructions from my teacher and preceptor Ajahn Kaccana, who taught a retreat in 2008 on metta. It's available in the transcripts of the talks are available in a book with a nearly completely white cover called Abundant, Exalted, Immeasurable. And the recordings are available on the Ajahn Kaccana archive, the Bayagiri's website. And Ajahn Kaccana recommends beginning with the phrases, but then as the practice develops, one begins to notice. He uses the word metta nimitta, the sign of metta, and this is the heart's response to these phrases, to the experience of wishing oneself well. And so, sort of warmth, brightness, uplift, well-being. And he suggests that when this becomes strong enough, you can gradually set down the phrases and let the experience of let the embodied experience of goodwill be your meditation object. So instead of bringing the mind back to the phrases, you pay attention to, am I with this experience of goodwill, or has the mind wandered somewhere else? And when it wanders, you bring it back to that sense of warmth in the heart, or another quality of metta is its spaciousness. And this goes back. The spacious quality goes all the way back to the Pali Canon. The other chant in our chanting book, which is repeated numerous times in the suttas, is, "I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with goodwill, abundant, exalted, immeasurable." Abundant, exalted, immeasurable. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with goodwill, abundant, exalted, immeasurable. I'm missing something there, but that's okay. You get the sense of it, and actually, one also pervades the sense of pervading the quarters. The first, the second, the third, and the fourth. This would be like north, south, east, west, above and below, around and everywhere. And so that sense of spaciousness. And so, both warmth, so the sense of warmth, vast space, and because there, again, this quality of goodwill breaks down the boundaries between sort of who I am and who you are. The sense is that if you focus on the thing, there are some things that, say we're eating chocolate, and there's only one square of chocolate left. Either I eat the square of chocolate or you eat it. And if we're really attached to the chocolate, then I'll think it'd be better if I eat it and you don't. And so that's a very petty example, but it puts up boundaries. Whereas metta is, goodwill breaks them down. One recognizes, I can be just as happy if the other person eats the chocolate. And similarly with much less petty things. And so again, the Buddha is always one of his insights, I think early on, while he was still a bodhisattva, was that if I try to seek happiness if I try to find happiness in places that other people are also seeking happiness, then I'm going to be in conflict with them, and my happiness won't be secure. That was a substantial insight. And again, the happiness that comes with freedom from ill will, freedom from hostility, freedom from anxiety is not a happiness that conflicts with anyone. And therefore, focusing there allows one to put down those separations and experience substantial spaciousness. And the metta practice continues on to people beyond ourselves. And I think traditionally it may be a sense of, one might imagine, sending metta to groups of people. You start with a benefactor, someone like your spiritual teacher or your parents, who you have a great deal of gratitude towards and whom it's easy to wish well. And then one continues to a friend, someone who, maybe not more a peer. It is highly recommended to stay away from anyone you might feel romantic attraction towards. That's one of the downsides of metta practice, is that, if you're having sort of difficulties with falling in love with people, practicing metta won't help. It might make things worse. So you try to steer clear of that. And then after a friend, then a neutral person, someone who you say see every day, but don't really have either positive or negative feelings, and then the most difficult, onto a difficult person. And I guess I was saying, classically, this is often seen, imagining sending metta towards these people. But I think many modern teachers say it is more helpful to, when you've cultivated the space I was describing earlier, to imagine bringing those people into that space. So instead of going out to them, imagine them coming to you. And this makes it more grounded. You imagine just staying in the same place, and the presence of that other person doesn't dilute or diminish or alter the quality of metta. Doesn't have to go anywhere, and you don't have to go anywhere. And these days, and then after one has sent metta toward, or invited these people into that place, one can start to invite groups and even all beings. For myself, I no longer go through all the exercises of the groups. I do myself, and then all beings. Seems to be simple enough. But again, the recommendation is to start with developing, imagining different people and different groups. And it's helpful to keep the interest going. If this does become a primary practice for you for any particular length of time, you do have to work against sort of boredom and just getting inured to doing the same thing all the time. That's a theme in any kind of meditation practice. So varying it, and varying the phrases, and varying the people who, or animals, one is sending, recipients of metta, is skillful. And so my experience was is that this is generally what I would do as a layperson to get out of holes, and I continued it on and off as a monastic. It's still helpful for that. And also it depending, sometimes it can be quite an intense form of well-being. And when, with that intensity, it's very good to stay grounded in the body, to soak that sense of well-being into the body. And other ways that I've used it is if you have something difficult to do and that's not too mentally taxing. For instance, walking up the hill at Dao Monastery. I found it just may I abide in well-being and freedom. I found it had a nice rhythm to it, and I could just do that. I could just sync that to my footsteps and sort of zip up the hill. And my experience was, you have sort of more energy and less, I guess power of positive thinking. But it got me up the hill. It was very, very, very good way to, up the hill before I knew it. And it was like, okay, this is useful. And I imagine it will work similarly. You just walk. My experience, you just walk faster and longer if you are thinking, thoughts of goodwill. Just in terms of the going a bit farther, it's pretty clear from the sutta texts that the practice of goodwill is not complete. It's very skillful, but just practicing goodwill in and of itself is not liberating. And that's why the Metta Sutta, which we just chanted, ends with the lines, by not holding two fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from sense desires, is not born again into this world. And so those are, up until that point, the sutta has been instructions for cultivating metta, and then it says how to go, and then it gives some brief hints about how to go beyond it, because one needs to let go of erroneous perceptions about the world. The pure-heartedness is already cultivated by metta practice. One does need to drop sensual desires, and so there's more to do. But the metta practice can be a very helpful way of developing samadhi, which is my Ajahn Kaccana translates it as the firm establishment of the mind. And so, the mind really, when the mind and body feel really good, they just want to stay in one place. And that place of goodwill is a very pleasant place to stay. And so, pervading body and mind with goodwill, you can, if done well, skillfully, you can stay there a long time. And that stability can then be grounds for insight. And I won't be, I definitely can't give complete or detailed instructions here, but the recognition is that even this place of goodwill has drawbacks. There's still a sense of self and other. There's a sense of someone doing something. One recognizes the drawbacks of that, and then the suttas say, one attends instead to the deathless element. And so, but the metta can be when cultivated well, the mind needs to be very stable in order to do that, and metta practice can provide that kind of stability. So it can be used either as an adjunct to something like mindfulness of breathing, or if it's very appealing to you, it can be used as a great deal of the practice in and of itself. So I will offer these words for your reflection tonight.